Yeah, we are preparing to live stream in YouTube now.
Okay.
Setting up.
By the way, Dr. Suphatmet Yunyasit, nice to see you.
Yes, nice to see you.
Have I met you before?
I'm not sure, but I used to study in Malaysia.
Oh, begitu lambat.
By the way, Dr.
UM and UKM. Yes.
Because I'm also I also teach at Mahidol University.
Oh, really?
Yeah,
Maybe...
in your department.
Oh, yeah. By Dr. Sipapa, she invited.
Yes.
Oh.
Yeah. I teach in the Ph.D. program over there.
Oh, yes.
I've not seen you there, so I was wondering.
Oh, I also teach some PhD course and also master, and 8 years already. I'm there for 8 years.
Oh, okay.
But I belong to the peace study. Ajahn Sipapa is on the human right.
Yes.
So maybe it's like different kind of division, like small division. Yeah.
Okay. Ajahn Gautam is still there?
Ajahn Gautam, yes. He's 76 years old. But still help me with the class.
We are live now, so perhaps we should start. Ladies and gentlemen, participants, audience of this webinar, good afternoon, and thank you for participating at this webinar. This webinar is the 5th webinar from a discussion series that we have conducted so far, and today's webinar will be looking into the theme of empowering women and youth in building sustainable peace. This is in reference, of course, to the joint statement on promoting women, peace and security in ASEAN adopted in 2017, where empowerment is important not only to promoting regional peace and stability or sustainable development, but is also crucial in the realization of an sharing, caring, inclusive, people-oriented and people-centered ASEAN community. The webinar is aiming to explore the linkages between empowering women and youth and building sustainable peace, and it also aims to see how it can be implemented through dialogue between or amongst women and youth as part of a building sustainable peace. Overall, the webinar is to explore how dialogues can foster not only understanding, but also tolerance and embrace diversity amongst different groups in the framework of building sustainable peace. The first webinar was taking the theme of WPS and COVID-19 in ASEAN. And now we are ending the discussion series with, again, focusing on women, but now on how could we empower women and youth in ASEAN in building sustainable peace. So this is to show that the ASEAN-IPR is very much into the question of how peace processes can be inclusive that is involving the important role of women and also the important role or contribution that the youth can make to peace processes. So thank you very much once again for joining this webinar. And I would like in closing, I would like to present you with the video showing the 3 years activities of this ASEAN Institute for Peace and Reconciliation, 2017-2020, which I'm honored to chair. So hope you have, I'm sure you have an interesting session this afternoon. Thank you very much for your attention. All right. Now over to you, Professor Askandar.
Okay, thank you, Pak Rizlan, Ambassador Rizlan. Assalamualaikum, good afternoon, everybody. My name is Kamarulzaman Askandar. I'm the representative of Malaysia to the advisory board of the ASEAN Institute for Peace and Reconciliation. I'm also a professor of peace and conflict studies at University Science Malaysia in Penang, Malaysia. Thank you to the ASEAN Institute for Peace and Reconciliation for inviting me to become the moderator for this afternoon. They know it's always better to invite me as a moderator than as a speaker or discussant, because I tend to talk too much and ask too many questions. But you know, so it's an honor for me to become the moderator for today's session on empowering women and youth in building sustainable peace. And as we all know, building peace, takes a lot of effort. And for the peace to be truly sustainable, it needs the inclusiveness aspect. It needs to include, all aspects of society and all the stakeholders and the victims of any particular conflict situation. And we know that women and youth play a very important role in building sustainable peace. This afternoon, we have three eminent speakers that will be speaking and presenting their views on the subject. I will just quickly introduce their names, and then I will go through their biodata so that we can get to know better who are our speakers for this afternoon. For the first speaker, it is Dr. Suphatmet Yunyasit, and Dr. Suphatmet Yunyasit is the Secretary General of the Religions for Peace and of the Interreligious Council of Thailand, and she is also a lecturer teaching at the Institute of Human Rights and Peace Studies, Mahidol University in Thailand. And she has been very active in promoting interreligious dialogue and in promoting peace and peace processes in southern Philippines as part of one of her main area. She started her work on conflict transformation and peace building after graduating with a Ph.D. in anthropology with focus on ethno-religious minority group struggle to preserve identity and build community. And she has organized and facilitated intra and interreligious dialogues designed for conflict transformation and relationship building between conflicting parties in Thailand's three southernmost provinces. The current project focuses on the participation and roles of the Buddhists of the South in conflict transformation and peace building. So a lot of experience in promoting interreligious dialogue and empowering the people themselves to do peace. So welcome, Dr. Suphatmet Yunyasit. And our second speaker is Dr. Dinna Prapto Raharja. I hope I got your name right. My apologies, if I do not get it right. Dr. Raharja is active in societal activities. She is currently faculty member at Binus Nusantara University in Jakarta, also teaching postgraduate programs at University of Indonesia, Gajah Mada University, and Parahmadina University. So a few universities, she's working at a few universities. Very busy schedule, I presume, but very popular with the universities. She founded Synergy Policies, a consulting company dedicated to building synergy across multi-sectoral policies. She is also active as senior policy advisor for the Foundation for International Human Rights Reporting Standards and for the Industrial Relations Institute based in Jakarta, and the Asian Vision Institute based in Phnom Penh, Cambodia. So she has a lot of experience, in doing this kind of work, and we welcome Dr. Dinna Prapto Raharja, to this seminar. The discussion for this session this afternoon is Ms. Jasmina Bosto, who is the Executive Officer in the Office of the Deputy Secretary General of the International Dialogue Center, KAICIID. Welcome, Ms. Bosto. She provides strategic and technical assistance in the planning, design, and execution of external relations strategies and partnership priorities of the center, focusing on partnerships with government and intergovernment entities. And she is also responsible for the management of the Office of External Relations of KAICIID, headed by the Deputy Secretary General. And the biodata is very long, a lot of activities, that she has given to us and that she has done on the ground. I'm sure that many of these activities will be reflected in the presentation this afternoon. So we are looking forward to hear from Ms. Jasmina Bosto. So before we begin the session, just a quick note, we will give each speaker 15 minutes to do their presentation, and we will go through all the speakers. Okay, so we will give 15 minutes to Dr. Yunyasit, and then Dr. Raharja, and also Ms. Bosto, and we will only collect the questions at the end of the 3 presentations. So if you have any questions, please can you write them in the Q&A box of the Zoom and pass it on to the Secretariat. The Secretariat will collect all the questions and give to the speakers. So if you want to ask any specific questions directly to the speakers, please also mention in your questions to whom that you want to direct the questions to, or otherwise I will just appoint one of the speakers or even all of the speakers to answer the questions. So without further ado, I give the floor now to the first speaker, Dr. Suphatmet Yunyasit, will be discussing the nexus between building sustainable peace and the importance of empowering women and youth. Please, Dr. Suphatmet Yunyasit.
Thank you very much, Prof. Askandar, and for the introduction, and also good afternoon to all ladies and gentlemen, as well as a member of the AWPR Women Peace Registry. I'm just new here. I just joined in May. Thailand just joined you guys in May. So sorry for the delay, but okay, I would like to share my slide. Can I share myself the slide? Okay. Yep. Thank you. So, yep. I am working in the area of peace, conflict and peace studies, and also introduced by Prof. Askandar. I work a lot in the South Thailand with the team at the Institute of Human Rights and Peace Study, and also Religion for Peace Thailand. So today, just to share my thought on this important and quite timely issue. Actually, we've been talking about this empowering women and youth for quite some time. And so far we have seen very little improvement in terms of how women and youth really been empowered and how their voice and actions, participation can be taken seriously in all the structures of the society. So far little has been done. So we need to talk more and stress more on this such an important issue, right? So I will be assigned to tackling these two questions, right? Why the other my co-discussant will cover other area. So the 2 questions are, why is it so important to empower women and youth, right? And what good can it be for the society if this is done successfully. So, and the second question is that if we really engage women and youth into dialogue, would it lead to sustainable peace? So it's just two questions that I'm gonna tackle. For the first question, when I asked by the organizer team to address this question, I was thinking, seriously, do we really have to talk again on this? Because it's been a lot. It's been going on quite for some time, and then I don't think that any of us need to be convinced that this is an important issue, right? But of course, if if some of you maybe not so convinced, maybe I will take about 3 or 4 minutes to show you that why it had to be done, this issue, why it's so important, and why we need to empower women and youth right now, right? So women empowerment, women constitute for about half of the world populations as we know, right? And the world today is driven by women in the sense that they are the key players in various sections of the society. According to the State of Women in City report in 2012, is still quite valid until today. Women are drivers of economic growth, and that wealth in hands of women lead to much more equitable outcomes in terms of qualities of life of family and communities. And we being daughters, wife, sisters, mothers, women also play various roles in the family, in communities, and also social life of the country, right? We are caretakers to the people around us, and our duties and responsibilities are greater, to some extent, much greater than those of men. Actually, no offense to Prof. Askandar, but I can, this is somehow, in some sense, it's true, right? This is due to our nature, also our versatility, to handle all the roles that we've been assigned to by the society. So, but even though when we are the key driver in many sections of the society, our participation, especially on making decisions on certain issues that concern our life, our well-being, is somehow quite lacking, right? Quite limited. Men makes most of the decision, and why we just sometimes we look helplessly, and they make decision that concerns our life without our consent or without our participation. So if you look at the chart here, the map here that I showed, this one from 2019, it showed that gender inequality still exists around the world, many countries around the world. Women still not enjoy the equal status with men, their men counterpart. But our region, Southeast Asia, we can see that we do better than some other region, but we can do better than that, I believe. So this is something that there's a room for improvement. Look at Southeast Asia, only Malaysia, I think, that the women enjoy somehow of equal status with men and participations and everything, right? But in Thailand, you still have to see that there's a lot of room for improvement, right? Yeah, but also this statistic from the Pew Research Center based in DC, they show that even a country like United States, where, you can see that gender equality may be established quite firmly there, women still feel that they are not so better off than men. In some other area, men at the advantage than themselves, right? So this is just to give you a glimpse onto this, what is happening in the world, and gender inequality still exists, and then we need to do something more to improve this situation. There's many things that we can change. We need an increase in participations of women in election, in public leadership, in decision making, the expansions of opportunity for women in entrepreneurship, education as well, employment, and also we need some improvement in terms of rights and security for women. It is imperative that women and men should enjoy equal rights and opportunities on moral and ethical, economic, political grounds. This will not be only in gender women well-being, but will also increase their individual collective prosperity, as well as the prosperities of the country as a whole too. Yes, so this is the situation of women. We still need this picture to materialize more, and then there's a lot of room for improvement. But for the youth, I believe that every one of us has been through the state of adolescence, and a young adult before. So I believe that we can all recall the situation when we just, you know, at home, at school, universities, or the workplace with the youngest, and then they're not taking us seriously, right? At that time, you know, I think everyone can recall that. And in the adult predominant sphere, we feel so small and so unimportant, right? Our voice seems to be so tiny, and no one is really taking us seriously, citing that we have such a little experience in life. So, you know, they just said, okay, you wait, you don't know anything yet, let me make decision. So that thing happened for the youth every day that they have to go through. So their voice seemed to be not taken seriously, yes, and also they have also there's some perceptions about youth that been handed down many decades ago, since the time that sociologists started to study about youth in 1940, at that time when we have the research done by white in the States about the street corner society. If you remember in 1943, that research also portray youth as a deviant or as a troublemaker of the society. And somehow that perception still, you know, still exists in many society today, because being new member of the society, young people, sometimes they need time to adjust to the rule that's set by the adult, right? And accordingly, they have to be convinced to conform by such rule, and their behavior sometimes is not go in line with the standard behavior set by adults. So that's why they've been perceived as deviant or as rebellious, or as you know, the not go well with the majority of the society. So that kind of perceptions still exist, and somehow it make them being sidelined in certain way by the majority of the society, being sidelined in terms of the economic, social, and political sphere as well, because they think that you're too young to make decision, you don't know anything yet. So I choose this photo. It's just if you follow the news about the demonstrations in Thailand during the past month, we have the youth movement that they are fed up with what's going on in Thailand, and they want to make change, and they feel that, oh, this why their voice never been heard before, their concern, their fear for the future has never been taken seriously. So this is the demonstrations take place on the October 18 at the Victory Monument in Thailand, the heart of Bangkok. You can see a lot of most of them are the young people that they go on the street and try to urge the government to listen to their voice and their proposal for the futures of the country. So this is happening not only in Thailand but also in other countries around the world. In Zimbabwe, if I'm following the news, also the youth try to urge the government to take them to think of them as an asset instead of a liability when you want to, you know, want to plan for the future of the country. They are asset, not liability. So the same thing used around the world also would like adults to take them seriously and to regard them an asset as well, right? So this thing is happening in Thailand and in Southeast Asia and across the globe. Yes, it's happening right now. And yes, and like I said before, we have been, if you look at the situations of women, we also been constrained by form of violence, various types of violence, right? The most difficult one is the cultural violence. When you have the perception set on women and youth in certain way, it kind of translate into behavior, into the kind of discriminations or something like that. So how we're gonna tackle this issue is a kind of very big issue, but empowering women and youth, we can slowly, step by step, make them speak up and make them gain a space in order to be able to advance for their rights and also make their voice heard. So it's a step to do in order to empower them. And around the world, we also heard that if we promote women and youth participations in the spheres of social activities or political activities, empower them in some way, we can promote overall development, right? We can eradicate poverty, people say as well. And also we can reduce violence and exploitations happening around the world, right? And we increase the participation of women. Of course, the national and the national, regional, also global development we tend to increase, right? And yes, this kind of thing happening, but I still think that empowerment can do in many forms, but the economic empowerment may be gonna be the easy way to achieve. If the youth and women feel that they are insecure about their life, it's easier for them to look into other areas that they would like to tackle, right? So in the conflict area, also women and youth need more attention and need to be allowed to participate more because they are stakeholders in the conflict. Look at the south of Thailand, for example, we have a large number of women that get affected by the violence. They lost their family members, they lost their husband, they lost their son, and they have to take up the role of the breadwinner, have to earn from the family. And also the youth, the young people, they lost their family, they lost their parents, they also have to survive, try to survive on their own. So the situation is quite severe in terms, if you have the context, we set youth and women in the context of violence and conflict situation, right? But in the South Thailand, we don't have the strategy or the kind of structure that we can empower women. This one is happening in 2015, where women try to assert their need, fear, and concern and urge that there will be no violence against women in the South Thailand. The youth also try to do the same thing. So now I have about 4 minutes to move on to my second question, which is how, the linkage between dialogue, youth, women dialogue with sustainable peace. Our approach to do dialogue is that we see dialogue as a starting point for empowerment and also for sustainable peace. We do various types of dialogue that can enhance the relationship between groups in conflict situation. And of course, empowering also be inserted into our dialogue, right, as well. So when it comes to dialogue, I'm very biased because I think dialogue is a key tool for the conflict transformation and for peace building, for sustainable peace, yes. But not all form of dialogue will count. Only the meaningful one will count. So meaningful one meaning that you need inclusivity of the people. People come to dialogue in order to learn about perspective that they don't have, to learn about experience that they don't have, to hear about other people, and to gain understanding. So inclusivity is the key. So how to engage youth and women into the dialogue? We need to select all the participants with background, with various background and diversity in form of views and experience. And of course, we need to ensure that no immediate decision need to be made during the dialogue. And also the balance of power when you share in the dialogue circle, everybody have an equal right to speak up about their experience and learn and share with one another. Of course, in the dialogue, for the dialogue in the south of Thailand, we have the track 1, track 2, and track 3, right? But the track 1, we have no representative of women and youth in such a formal peace dialogue. But what we can do, we insert women and youth in the track 2 and 3 dialogue, where we organize among the mid-range leaders and also the grassroots leader. We try to bring the women in because women have a lot to say, what they want for the future, what seems to be the problem, how can we overcome certain issue, right? So we bring youth and women together, and whatever we have from the dialogue, we extract that and propose to those who with power and authority. And we hope that they listen to the voice of women, and they bring that one into practice. And we have done in certain time that we conduct dialogue, and then we write up the proposal, and then we propose to those who have the state authorities and also the insurgent group as well, that okay, this is the view of the women and youth, and how you're gonna incorporate this view into your dialogue that's going on at the track 1 level, right? Yes. This is some kind of the picture that we have done in the youth dialogue in 2018. And also we do a women and youth cross-group dialogue, intergroup dialogue. And the interreligious sense of interaction also there. We invite Buddhist participants, Muslim, we have the Baha'i, we have Christian, we have every group of women and youth that join to our dialogue. Yes, so that's gonna be wrap up everything that I would like to say. But of course, we need to bear in mind that the youth will bring new ideas to the dialogue since they are so flexible, they're open to new ideas, that's the asset of the youth. They bring new ideas that we never think of. But women, they look at the thing as a holistic as possible because they assume so many roles. So that's why that's the asset that the women can bring into the table when we do dialogue. So I think I make some sense for this 15 minutes. If you have any question, you just write in the box and I will be happy to answer. Thank you.
Okay, thank you, Dr. Yunyasit. Actually, you were right on time, just exactly 15 minutes. So I'm happy I did not have to remind you. Thank you for your presentation. Also for reminding us about why we should include women and youth in our efforts to build peace. And it's very interesting that you mentioned about Southern Thailand and the activities, your dialogue activities over there. I'm sure we can further this discussion later on. So we'll go straight to our second speaker, Dr. Dinna Prapto Raharja. So the floor is yours. Please, you have 15 minutes.
Thank you very much, Professor Askandar. Ladies and gentlemen, Excellencies, Bapak Reslan Zeni, good afternoon. Assalamualaikum warahmatullahi wabarakatuh. Shalom, Om Swastiastu. Salam sejahtera untuk kita semua. Peace be with us all. I'm very happy to be able to share my thoughts with you this afternoon. I'm going to start from my own experience of not only attending events, engaging women, youth, and also on peace, but I would also share my thoughts on what still makes me not quite satisfied with what we have been through so far. So these are a few things that have happened in the past few years. I myself have organized several activities during my time in ASEAN Intergovernmental Commission on Human Rights or beyond. I'm also active in attending to social activities that actively enhance women and youth. And to me, there should be no doubt anymore that women and youth are important to enact peace. But the fact that even at the United Nations level, the Security Council resolution that has been enacted still needs to be regularly celebrated to remind people of how our women and youth is important, tells us that it is a challenging fact to make it a reality. These are a few things that I figure out as often appearing whenever we talk about peace. Number one, I see that we share the same views that over the years, although there has been some more dialogues, not necessarily there has been equal footing among stakeholders. Women and youth are still more often excluded, or there's not enough awareness among the rest of the population about why we need to include women and youth. And then there's not enough access to decision making. And the list of the questions there is listed. I see strong resistance as well from several groups in having women and youth participated. And what is ironic as well, in order to participate, oftentimes you need to be victims or family of victims. So the stage of victimhood versus masculine identity of problem solvers is, to me, very, very ironic. And the case gets worse when we see the violence appearing in the form of gross violation of human rights, such as genocide, for instance, or systematic disappearance of groups of people. You start seeing narratives that are trained to place certain groups, certain parts of our society as separatists or terrorist movements. So I ask myself, and I think I'm lucky I can discuss it with this group this afternoon, is what has been missing in all of this that we have tried to put together so far? How to improve our efforts to preserve and promote peace? And I think something needs to be very clear. Number one is on the terminology that we've been using. Youth, of course, 15 to 24 years. Women is adult female human being. But peace, do we understand peace in the same way? Oftentimes, we misunderstood peace as in the absence of conflict. But I myself see conflict as part of society. Conflict is part of our efforts to negotiate in sociopolitics, socioeconomics, and sociocultural realms. So conflict is part of a way to redistribute resources and to some degree also to redistribute power. We cannot escape conflict, but we can avoid conflict to grow stronger into something that would mobilize people into polarizing groups and then weaponize them, disinform them, creating propaganda, and allowing violence to happen and seeing violence as acceptable. So in my whole presentation today, I'm looking at violence as a condition or the ability to prevent or to prevent open conflict or confrontation between groups fighting over resources or power. So this is very critical on the definition, because inside of ASEAN, in my observation, there is still a deviation of views in terms of what peace means. Right to peace in human rights has been understood as the right to enjoy peace, such as all human rights are promoted and protected, and that development is fully realized. What I would like to underline here is that the means to peace is just as important than the peace itself. So we cannot just have peace just for the sake of quietness. We have to fulfill the rights of individuals in the society in order to have peace. And that's the true peace. So inside of ASEAN Human Rights Declaration, for instance, some member states still often misunderstood this clause as something that mean abstinence from saying anything against the government, or trying to condone violence for the sake of national unity or stability in the region. But if you look carefully at how the Human Rights Declaration Article 38 is phrased, it's very clear. The basis of this is human rights. You cannot have peace without respecting the human beings in it. So the second thing that's important, peace is social. So peace cannot be only about the being of one. It's because it's social, it means also dynamic. It is embedded in a society, just like conflict itself is embedded in society. So what can be very dangerous is the point where a society is condoning peace, condoning violence, condoning violence. So I see peace and conflict as part of a cycle in a society. We can avoid making any disputes turn into open confrontation and violence, of course, and that's our target. But we cannot pretend that peace means nothing of this sort. So the third thing that I observe has been very dominant in most dialogues, any dialogues so far that I've attended, involving not only Southeast Asian countries, but also Western countries, is that there are dominating perspectives in us seeing peace. Number one is the view of norms, that if we all agree on certain norms, then for some reason, the norms will permeate into laws and regulations, and then it will turn into enforcement that would support peace. Or the second one is that whenever we have dialogues at the macro levels, there will be sharing of best practices. And thus somehow these people would come home and create policy reform. The third thing is having institution of peace. So you can channel all the funding or the personnel and voila, there's peace. What we have to realize is peace is a very layered process. There's a local element of it, there's a national element of it, and there's the element of international. And different cases requires different treatments. For some countries, speaking about conflicts and tensions at home, at the local and grassroots level, is very dangerous to bring to the international levels. And thus, having intercultural dialogues, inter-country dialogue, can be something that is avoided. So we face this oftentimes inside of ASEAN, for instance. But I think we have to be, the point here is to be critical of how we see things and realize that these dominating perspectives are not the only perspectives available out there to generate peace. We have to realize that in our society, there are preconditions in our society. Some are harder to crack, some are harder to change than others. This is what we call structural circumstances. The second one is that somehow, if you want peace, you need a bunch of agents of change that could connect the dots. This requires competence, skills, willingness, and protection. And this kind of whole-scale skill cannot escape their best understanding about political situations in the country that they're handling. Third, opportunities to participate in shaping reform or change. So some societal divides are problematic or less tolerable than others. The one on the left is much harder to negotiate than the right ones. Just this morning, we watched on TV how, France is facing another wave of challenge of violence inside of their country, and how a response from a relatively young president has been faced with, polemics outside of France. And so this, suggests that we cannot just create or assume there's a one model of peace across the world. Different history of countries will generate different ways of seeing peace. So these are just my breakdowns on institutional perspectives. Usually, if people have personal perspectives, they would rather suggest for long-term strategies, representation, this kind of things in their analysis. But I've highlighted here some of the limitations of that, which includes the things I mentioned. We fail to see to empower the agents. So 2 approaches is what I'm suggesting. Number 1 is human rights-based approach. Oftentimes in our dialogues, it's very hard to highlight this one, which is the willingness of participants to see and view from the perspectives of the weak, from the marginalized, and to be able to say, yes, I think our society is having challenges at this level. The civil society may be able to articulate that, but not necessarily the state. The third is that we need room to heal. So instead of resorting to court alone, why I'm saying this, because most of the time, whenever I cater to groups needing justice, they always need to go to court to handle things. And this is not helping people to heal. And this is just postponing another round of tensions and violence. Capacity building and participation is needed, but everybody must have the same chance. So instead of representation, just a few groups, just the elite being trained. Last is agent-driven movement. This is the opposite of institution approach. If you are an agent, you are moving very dynamic. You don't have to have long-term plans. But what's important is your commitment. Your commitment to continue breaking the walls that marginalized some people. That is not that's injustice. So in order to do that, you have to mobilize participations instead of neutralizing participation. You have to work with civilians instead of using a security approach. So the concept of empowerment that I would like to highlight here is to build on the strength of a community to have resilient means to grow. Because when we just talk without talking about the roots of every society that's facing challenges of peace, knowledge doesn't always transpire to peace. Knowing the weakness of others can lead to stigmatization and exploitation. So every empowerment needs steps that's very clear. Respect, tolerance, and equity are the key message that I think important. But in order to do that, we cannot detach history from it. The case in Patani is totally different from what is growing in France, for instance, or in Germany, or in Italy, or in the United States in terms of racism. So acceptable political solutions is also never going to be the same. So my recommendations for ASEAN-IPR, if I can, is to do several of these activities. Number one is to do a call for research. This is my last slide, which is to document conflicts with certain similar outputs. Some conflicts lead to horizontal conflicts, some others lead to military approach, but we need to look at the sociological characters of this conflict before we compare it with conflicts that ends in negotiation. Not everything can end in the same style of negotiation. And then we can develop research or workshops that can document views of leaders. If it's ASEAN, then let's talk about leadership in ASEAN, what peace is to them. And see whether what I mentioned earlier, the examples of definition of peace is what is among them. Who knows? Maybe it's not what they're talking about. And third, youth call for paper and workshop, same thing, but for youth. So we can exactly identify what's inside their head. And then last, activities such as making regular circulars on ASEAN website about societal initiatives and movements to grow or nurture peace despite challenges. I guess with this kind of activity, we can appreciate peace more in their own context and hopefully become more productive and meaningful in growing peace in our society. Thank you very much.
Okay, thank you very much, Dr. Dinna, Prapto, Raharja. You only took 60 minutes, but it's okay. I'll give you the extra 1 minute. A lot of things you mentioned. I will not summarize it now. I will summarize it later on, but also good recommendations at the end there for the ASEAN-IPR to look at and possibly to implement. So now we go straight to the third speaker, the discussant, Ms. Jasmina Bosto. Please, you have 15 minutes.
Thank you. Good afternoon, everyone, and thank you for the opportunity. I'd like especially to thank His Excellency, the Executive Director of ASEAN-IPR. It is really an honor to speak, and I'm very humbled, especially after these presentations that were very comprehensive. So I hope I'll do justice to my role today. It is really an honor to participate today with you, also because of the very important topic that we're discussing, empowerment of youth and women. And as some of my fellow speakers have already mentioned, this year we're celebrating several anniversaries of international policy and legal documents that really brought to the attention the importance of women and youth empowerment. So 25 years since the Beijing, I'm so sorry, Beijing Platform of Action. We also have the UN Security Council Resolution 1325 and the one on youth and peace and security. All of these are very relevant, they're very important, and in a way they show the commitment of member states of the United Nations to this topic. However, as some of my fellow speakers have mentioned, how do we actually translate these policy frameworks into action? That's the question. I was asked by dear colleagues from ASEAN, the organizers, to address this from the experience of the organization that I represent today, which is the KAICIID International Dialogue Center, an intergovernmental organization established in 2012, located in Vienna, Austria, and really with a global mandate to promote interreligious and intercultural dialogue towards peace and social cohesion. I will structure my presentation in three parts. The first one really explaining or presenting to you how we see dialogue. And I think we're quite aligned with previous speakers in all the aspects that need to be fulfilled in order for dialogue to be meaningful and impactful. And I will move then a bit to the role and engagement of women and youth, particularly with regards to our programs and on grassroots level. And finally, just a brief reflection on enabling context. So let's start with what is dialogue. I won't repeat some of the very important descriptions that were already provided, but often dialogue, we think about dialogue as colloquially as just a conversation between two people. Obviously, in KAICIID, we see it more as a structured engagement between people of different identities, people with different backgrounds, but an engagement that is really emphasizes the self-expression, respect, mutual understanding, the willingness to listen at the end of the day, and a compassionate spirit that opens up really the doors for cooperation. As previously mentioned, dialogue is people-centered, and maybe that's one of the key added values why we should engage in a multiplicity of diverse dialogues that exist and that are at our disposal. It also helps us to heal, and perhaps talking about peace and social inclusion, stability, security, that is key. We've seen from our experience that dialogue can really be transformative, and that's basically one of the main emphasis that I would like to put on today. It can help bring together diverse settings, diverse actors, and really engage in collective and inclusive decision making. And of course, when we talk about inclusion, we cannot but not talk about women, but also youth. In today's times where we are all challenged by a pandemic, where we see the importance of actually talking, dialogue, and communicating and entering in dialogue, dialogue can help us overcome increased tensions. We're now moving to a virtual platform, engaging virtually in dialogue. So what does that mean as well? Because we often think about dialogue as an offline activity, a face-to-face activity, and moving on online platforms does represent a new opportunity, but also there are many challenges. How do we transmit the messages of inclusion in times where maybe we move more towards exclusion and stigmatization? So my fellow previous speakers have very comprehensively presented the ways of engagement of women and youth. And obviously, as Dr. Yunyasit already mentioned, we don't have to necessarily convince ourselves, or I hope not many others, that we indeed need to engage women and youth in these processes. I think that we all acknowledge that it is key for multiple reasons, the numbers in terms of percentage of population, but also the added value of women and youth in these processes. But also another thing that I spotted from, and I'm apologizing if I pronounce the name wrongly, but from Dr. Dinna Raharja, is the emphasis of women and youth usually as victims, right? So always treating these two groups as somehow target audience rather than really engaging them as stakeholders creating solutions. They're always, or not always, but very often, the recipients of solutions that were already tailored earlier, where they were not necessarily included in the design, in the discussion, and finally the implementation. And that's perhaps something that KAICIID and we in general in our work together with our partners see the need to include women and youth from the very beginning, conceptually, designing the different programmatic activities and finally implementing them. And this is maybe where I'll move now to provide you with some just practical experiences or some of our knowledge that we gained. I would also like to emphasize that, as I said, we work globally, but we also focus on particular areas, and one of our programs is also focusing on Southeast Asia. We approach the very vibrant and diverse region in a very humble way. So we do engage with local stakeholders, but we also try to learn from local stakeholders and really see how we can support several processes there. We'll focus on Myanmar quite a lot, and perhaps I'll give you some examples from there. So women can represent a very powerful actors in different processes. Some of my colleagues mentioned peace processes, and then peace is more sustainable when women are engaged. But the real challenges still exist. We all see them. How do we actually move away just from words to action? And we at KAICIID see women as agents, something that, again, one of the fellow speakers mentioned, agents of transformation, specifically on grassroots community level. We see them as catalyzers of behavioral change, and we also see them as multipliers of knowledge. And really, in order to benefit from the amazing role that women can have, we have engaged in several initiatives through our fellows program that works to educate or build capacity of already educators from religious academic institutions. We try to build capacity of these individuals and participants in interreligious dialogue. We focus on women and youth there, and we already see well, I was asked to talk about the impact. Maybe impact is a longer term, requires a longer term engagement, hence we can't really measure it at this point, but what we see is already a positive feedback from our participants. And we see that fellows engaging with fellows on the ground, engaging with youth and women has positive results in terms of trickling down the impact in local communities. I'll give you an example. One of our fellows from Myanmar, a Buddhist nun, has went through the capacity building training that we offered and went back to her community and was a fervent supporter of interreligious, intercultural dialogue. She has advocated for it in her local communities. She has repeated the trainings or multiplied the trainings within the community, and in a way she became, what we hear from her and from her communities, that she became the voice of women across the country, Buddhist women, Buddhist nuns, deconstructing certain existing perceptions of women as religious actors. This is really what we see, this is how we see that religion and interreligious dialogue can support women's empowerment, interreligious, interfaith, intercultural. We see that women actually can, when their capacities are enhanced, they can actually multiply the positive outcomes on grassroots level, that they can feel empowered because of the enhanced skills, and ultimately through that, they do have a direct contribution locally. They also take ownership of their agency. Another initiative that we're very proud of is the Peaceful Myanmar initiative, where we promote and we see that through intercultural dialogue, we can address very serious issues. So dialogue not only as an end, but as a means to an end. We have recently organized theater events. So through theater, through the dialogue, through art, basically, we've seen that there's an engagement of the active participants, but also the public on very serious topics, on very concrete themes relevant for the community, electoral violence in this case, where we really see that it can promote an atmosphere of cooperation that then can be an enabling factor. And then youth, of course, we work a lot with youth. We see that youth is essential to be engaged in all processes. We have worked with the World Scouts movement and with different trainings on interreligious, intercultural dialogue, with providing them with skills to initiate and implement local activities. We have seen that youth are actually very interested to be active. Actually, for that matter, we all know that right now, while we speak, women and youth are the ones that are raising their voice, the ones that are voicing concerns, the ones that are talking about real issues on grassroots level. name it, from health, educational needs, economic struggles in this pandemic specifically. And from youth, what we receive and from our experience, the feedback is always that there's an interest to move beyond dialogue. So dialogue is great, but promote action through interreligious, intercultural dialogue. There is an interest to explore all the diverse themes that dialogue can address, such as mental health, such as educational needs, such as economic struggles. And also with youth, we see that we really need to empower them. They ask us always to support them on the grassroots level, perhaps with providing grants, the know-how, and etc. And once they have that, they multiply the positive impact. So I will conclude just briefly by saying that for all of this to happen and for all of these initiatives to actually be able to translate from policy, legal frameworks, from word and paper to actual action on the ground, it is really relevant to create the enabling context. And as I'm speaking on behalf of KAICIID, I see that in general, the intergovernmental sector and the intergovernmental organizations can be very valuable in joining forces, promoting multilateral, multi-stakeholder partnerships, because we are perhaps well placed as conveners, as entities that can provide a safe space for dialogue. So we would like to see more of multi-stakeholder partnerships, which are all very fancy words, but we really need engaging inclusively different stakeholders towards this goal, because peace and social cohesion are more sustainable when women and youth are engaged, because dialogue matters, because different actors matter, and because ultimately we really believe that women and youth can be empowered only and only if we engage with them, listening to their concerns, to their challenges, to the visions and the opportunities that they identify, and addressing them with them. So engaging them in order to find action from the very beginning. I hope I have rushed, but I hope I have not exceeded my time, and I'm very happy to address any further questions. And I thank you very much for the time and for the opportunity.
Thank you, Jasmina. Well, you did not even take up your 15 minutes, but it's okay. I'm sure that there are many more comments that you can make later on. So thank you to all the three presenters, for their very thoughtful, thoughts about the subject. It's difficult to summarize everything, and I can just mention some of the main points. I think is agreed. I think everybody agreed that the inclusion of women and youth, I mean, it's something which is not only necessary, but it shouldn't be taken, seriously, and that they are assets and not liabilities, and as mentioned by Dr. Yunyasit. And at the same time, I think the speakers also talk about the need, for dialogue, and dialogue has been mentioned throughout, the three presentations, and the need, to listen. I think what is important is to realize that, in many situations, everybody wants to speak, everybody wants to be heard, but nobody wants to listen. And how are we supposed to understand, other perspectives if we are not willing to listen to them? So I think from the experiences of the three presenters, they stress on listening, and not only including but also to listen, to different thoughts, to different ideas. And we also talk about the different tracks, that are involved in any conflict situations, and the need also to look at how we can be complementary in terms of the different tracks. And I think the presenter also mentioned that in track one we have, we cannot see the active role of women in track one, because most of the representatives at track one are mostly men. But at tracks 2 and 3, we see more involvement of women. And I think the the thing that we need to do is that, how to look at how the different tracks can complement each other. Because peace, as we know it, is something that needs the involvement of all the different stakeholders. Peace building needs to be comprehensive, and to be comprehensive is to be complementarity as well. So all the different actors, should be taken into account. We talked already about inclusivity and about the need for complementing the actions on at different levels. So that is something that we need to look at. And I find it interesting also that Dr. Dinna Raharja also mentioned about the need to look more at peace itself. Since many of us, when we work in the field of peace and conflict studies, I think attention has been given more towards the analysis of conflict. We need to know, of course, what is a conflict, how we define conflict and all those things. But at the same time, I think there is lacking in terms of looking at peace in a sense as peace not only as an end goal, but peace as a means to an end. And I think we need to be focusing more on that. Because if we are looking at peace as a means to an end, then we need to identify who can be the main actors in terms of promoting peace to get peace in the long run. So I think we need to focus more on that. And I also agree with Dr. Raharja, about the need to look also deeper into conflict, because conflict also has a transformative role that can be played. And we look at conflict, and if people look at conflict only as an absence of violence, then they are missing the essence of what a conflict can actually do to a particular situation. And we all know that in terms of violence, there are many different types of violence. And if we want to change, for example, structural violence, we need to be able to look at how then we can transform the structure. And transforming a structure would mean instigating, even I don't like the word instigating, because then people will accuse us as being provocateurs. We mentioned already a bit just now, but to get through that difficult process, sometimes we need to go through a process, of a bit of difficulties in order to reach, a more peaceful ending. So for that reason, conflict can also mean as a way of transforming a situation. Although we need to be able to make a difference between conflict and violence. I think we are all in agreement here, as mentioned by Dr. Raharja, that conflict can be necessary. But what we have to do maybe is to transform situation, go through the conflict, but preventing violence and avoiding violence, and do it in a peaceful way. And this is beautiful because then we can combine the transformation with the dialogue process that has been mentioned here. And dialogue can be seen as a way of transforming a situation through peaceful means. So I'm just trying to combine some of these things together. Dr. Raharja also mentioned the need to look at, not the need to look at, but she also identified some recommendations for the ASEAN-IPR, and I think we can also address some of these. We need to look at what kind of aspects research and workshops that we can do. And then we talk about empowerment, we talk about respect, about tolerance, about equity, and all those things. So a lot of examples also have been given by Ms. Jasmine in regards to the kind of work that they do in their own institution there. And but I also find it interesting, but that that Ms. Bosto also mentioned that in this current pandemic situation now, how do we do dialogue at a time, when we cannot do it face to face, and maybe we need to figure out, more creative ways of doing dialogue, given the kind of problem that we have. Because when we want to include people, we also want to include everybody. We have to look at challenges, that we have to address in terms of these things. So I have to stop now because I'm sounding like another speaker. And I want to listen to the questions that we will have to answer from the we have a few questions here. I'm looking at the chat box, and we have a question to Dr. Yunyasit and also to Ms. Jasmina. While the importance of including women and youth in the maintenance of peace and conflict prevention, the question is how to identify and select the right agent of change, especially in situations where potential conflict is escalating into violence. You know, this is the usual challenge. You know, that's the question. You know, that's asking. So, yeah. How do we select who we want to bring forward to the dialogue session? I mean,
so based on my experience that I'm working on the interreligious dialogue. At first we have to try, you know, that's a kind of a strategy that we use. At first we bring in the people. We don't know yet whether that person gonna be active agent of change, or they will bring into the dialogue the kind of thing that we want. But first of all, we have to select how the network they can go, like how large network that person hold, right? So we select the key actor first into the dialogue. And later on, it's a strategy like we have more people involved at the beginning of the dialogue. That's like a series of dialogue. It's never one dialogue. So the first one, we try to collect key actors, the one that we think can contribute to dialogue. And then we reduce. Later on, we will know, once we start a few dialogue, we will know which one of them is the one that we should keep. And then we move on to the key person dialogue for more people to keep key person. And then we will get the right one slowly. It's kind of difficult also, but at first we need to select someone that we think can contribute, and then they as a center, they have their own network to be able to, you know, spread out the idea into the broader society. And then we see what kind of contribution that person bring into the table. And then slowly, not everyone can join all the dialogue that we organize. So we have to be quite selective, because some issue about dialogue is specific to some group of people or some kind of experience or background. So that's a kind of thing that we need as an organizer team. We need to plan together. We need to lay out the profile of the prospective participants, and then we select from that group of the people. So it's a kind of, that's no strategy that we use, but we do like this, you know, we just try learning by doing. But of course, from more people, go to the key people, and then we get the age of change later on. We see whether we engage more in our dialogue, the attitude will tend to change. If they still talk about the past story or the fear new problem, that's meaning that the dialogue that we are not really successful. So when they start talking about common futures or something that they want change, that somehow dialogue already there's some fruit in the people. So we should keep those people and let them, you know, continue the journey with our peace building. Yeah.
Okay, thank you, Dr. Yunyasit. Ms. Bosto, you want to add on to that?
Thank you. Yeah, perhaps I can only add just two reflections that, of course, we approach it in a very similar way in terms of learning who the actors are in the field, learning about the context itself, and consulting with the grassroots. And I'd like also to highlight that indeed it's important to engage first the ones that are maybe the most obvious, that are already active and so on, but also to go beyond that. So to learn about maybe the shy ones or the ones that are not necessarily in the forefront, because then what we've observed our experiences that we have the tendency of then just repeating the dialogue, which is indeed important to have it as sustainable as possible, but very often with a limited group of people. So we try to also engage the ones that are maybe not the immediate obvious choice through learning about the context, and thus avoiding the preaching to the already convinced. Thank you.
Okay, thank you, Ms. Bosto. I mean, this is interesting, you know, this question about who do we select for dialogue sessions and all those things? Do we select the same people? And is it because we know that building peace takes time, and we need to do it over a longer period of time, and the kind of activities that we organize needs to be connected one to another and all those things. And I know the difficulty is not only in choosing which group to invite, but at the same time we need to also look at expanding it to a wider group. And then sometimes we need to also consider in any situation whether we need to make it small or large. I mean, this is all those interesting things on designing a proper dialogue process. I've got one question here on the Zoom. This is asked by Ms. Ayesha Abu Bakar. I think I know this person. And she's asking to the speakers, do you think that activities organized by ASEAN for the youth demonstrates the belief that they do have roles to play in peace building and leadership? Again, let me repeat it again. Do you think that activities organized by ASEAN, the Association of Southeast Asian Nations, for the youth demonstrates the belief that they do have roles to play in peace building and leadership? If yes, what are the good examples of this? And if not, what are the weaknesses of the ASEAN programs in relation to this group? I don't know whether the speakers can answer this or not, or maybe even Pak Rezlan, Ambassador Rezlan, want to answer this question because this is about activities organized by ASEAN. But I'll just throw it out there because it's been asked. Anybody wants to take this on? No?
May I?
Yes, please.
There's also a question in the chat box, but probably. So in ASEAN, I think in general, there has been several kinds of dialogues among youth. And most of the time, it's always been responded with enthusiasm among the youth. More often, what happened is the room is too limited for the representation of 10 member states to attend. And of course, we need big sponsorship in order to have big delegation from each member states. I think that's the challenge most of the time. But in terms of the content, I would respond as well to what Ibu Arta mentioned in the chat box, which is quite relevant actually to the question about how to empower the youth. Because the goal of any dialogue with youth and their participation in activities like this is mostly to make sure that they know what they can do. I would like to highlight, number one, youth today, youth in general is very enthusiastic to participate. They would like to matter in their society, but they have the tendency to be short in patience. So they can be easily frustrated if they have little exposure to options. Resilience happens with experience. So the more they know that there are options of things to do, way out for the problems that suffocates them, the better it will be actually for them. Now, most of the youth who participate in ASEAN activities, in my observation, are activists in campus. And they are either engaged because they want to get better jobs in the future, because in some campuses, having social activities matters in their transcripts of grade, or they are in general by nature is someone very passionate about social issues. People who are from majors of social science usually care a lot about this. So, but on the other hand, the way youth today is not trained to read a lot. They think to, it's very hard for them to read big materials. Compared to, I have to compare with my generation. Unfortunately, I'm not that old, but just the comparison makes me think, how is it so hard? They are much more visual and much more about dialogues and talks rather than reading. But the problem is, unless you reflect a lot and read a lot, it's very few you can understand about dialoguing with others. You know, others have different perspectives. What you have in mind may not necessarily be the same with what you have in mind. So I think the tool to engage the youth needs to be improved, not only through dialogues, but content such as YouTube, and then short circulaires. That's what I was thinking can be useful. ASEAN can provide, you know, examples of activities that you know, can show them best practices, you know, what has been done by youth around ASEAN to improve peace. And I think the second idea I have in mind is, remember the movement of Peace Corps in the US? Something like that is actually very moving, especially in time of high unemployment everywhere, and where people actually, on the other hand, wants to contribute to society. They feel that they matter, and not getting paid can actually be a motivation for someone to, as long as they feel they matter. So activities like being sent somewhere to help the needy is something that ASEAN-IPR, I think, can help organize to expose more youth to real engagement of peace. Thank you.
Thank you, Dr. Raharja. I think I agree with you in terms of the. I think we need to be more creative in our way, you know, or how to include, especially the younger people, the youth group, and we have seen how, you know, there a lot of these, you know, generational gaps, you know, which is causing problems, you know, including into how we see things and all those things. Maybe Dr. Yunyasit, you know, there is a question in regards to the interreligious dialogue. This is specifically on interreligious dialogue, and the question, you know, on this person is asking is in regards to how, I mean, how do you involve the youth in interreligious dialogue, or is it just a platform for religious leaders only, or do you also include youth in there? How do you do that in your activity?
Yes, can you hear me?
Yes, yes.
Okay, because my computer showed that my speaker is not working, so I'm just worried. Based on the work that I have done for the Institute of Human Rights and Peace Studies, also within for peace, and we try to develop a network, three networks: religious leader, women, and youth, right? And then we engage all of them into religious dialogue. Sometimes we cross group, like religious leader with women with youth, something like that. So they are quite actively engaged in our activities, but our dialogue is not like any other dialogue. We have like field trip as well, and also capacity building workshop for them. So the youth will be interested to join because they get to learn from their peers as well, and also get to, you know, learn firsthand about with other religions from their own. They learn a cultural literacy, visiting communities, and to do something with the community, with the local people. And after that, we brought them into the indoor dialogue to really discuss certain issue that important for them and try to find solutions. You know, there's various types of dialogue: relationship building dialogue, human relation dialogue, or like a activist dialogue that we call, or the problem solving dialogue. So we try to engage them in various types of dialogue. Sometimes they come up with some project after the dialogue, and then they do that project by themselves. We allow freedom for them to carry out the project that they discussed during the dialogue platform. So that's why we can engage them. And also social media is very important. We need to have a Facebook group for them, or the like application, you know, platform for them that they can interact, because this thing will die out if, let's say, you know, when they didn't come and interact face to face. You need to keep the group alive by using all this social media, and something that I had to learn because I'm not so tech savvy. But the youth, they can do that. If you find some representative that they are active in terms of using social media, it will help the group to, you know, survive for a very long time, and we can add new members into the group as well.
I think you can see in Thailand at the moment how social media is being used to mobilize.
The demonstration.
Yeah, a lot of people.
Telegram, I have the flash mob. Okay, see you today. You know,
flash mobs. I think Pak Rezlan, we need to see how we can, use flash mobs, kind of, to organize activities under the ASEAN-IPR. Yeah? Okay, we don't have much time left. I think we only have another about 5 minutes left. But I want to go to that last question, in regards to the what can we suggest ASEAN-IPR to do to enhance, the involvement of women and youth in building peace. Dr. Raharja mentioned already in her presentation about the need for more research and more workshops, youth types activities and all those things. But can we get also Dr. Yunyasit and Ms. Bosto to also maybe pick your brain on how the ASEAN-IPR can do more to mobilize, to empower women and youth in the activities. Can we go to Ms. Bosto first, please?
Thank you. Thank you very much. I would build on definitely gaining and enhancing knowledge for sure. So all research projects and so on are very, very, very important. But I would also suggest to perhaps organize consultations with both different entities, international or local and so on, civil society, intergovernmental organizations and other that are active in the field of engaging and promoting women and youth in the context of different dialogues, as Dr. Yunyasit said. So consultation with these stakeholders, but also really local representatives of women and youth. So having and facilitating this dialogue between organizations that are active and the real members of the community. I would say that would also further kind of wrap up the knowledge gathering, and then based on that, really when we hear the recommendations from these participants, perhaps more tailored projects could be developed. And I'd just like to emphasize that from our end, as KAICIID, we would be very pleased to support any of such endeavors that perhaps ASEAN would pick up and take. Thank you.
Okay, thank you, Ms. Bosto. Yeah, I think we should organize more activities like that. I remember when we used to organize also like peace camps, for example, and such type of activities. I want to go to Dr. Yunyasit, but I saw Ambassador Razlan's hand being raised. Do you want to say something first? Or?
Yeah.
Yes, please.
Yeah. Thank you very much. I'm really intrigued by the question on how we should deal and in making the role of youth really impactful. I think one of the things that I notice is a bit challenging is that we are working within three. Actually, we have to work within 3 pillars. But the thing is that each pillars now are having so many things that are actually related to empowering the youth, but it is not yet, as Dr. Yunyasit or Jasmina has said, very tailor-made that can bring together all the 3 pillars in moving this the question of how we empower youth and women. Because peace is very cross-cutting. It is covering many of the many aspects. So I think that is one challenge that ASEAN should overcome. How to work cross-pillar. Thank you.
Thank you, Pak Rezlan. How to work cross-pillar? It's a very tough question, because even working within 1 pillar is difficult enough. Now you are asking us to handle 3 pillars. But you know, coming back to that, and then I think this was raised a bit. This was raised a bit by Dr. Raharja. You know, on the meaning of peace itself. You know, because I think, you know, we also. I mean, I know that we cannot come, you know, to a term that can satisfy everybody, but at least we can have an understanding of what is peace. You know, so because what is peace, you know, for somebody like me and Pak Rezlan, you know, might be different from the perspective of, let's say, a 19, 20-year-old person. You know, I mean, Pak Rezlan and I used to be 20. We are not anymore. You know, we have changed a bit. You know, but our perception has also changed over the years. Okay, so there is that thing that we need to look at. Simply also because in any society, you know, how we deal with peace, how do we deal with conflict situations would depends on how we see the conflict and how we see the end result. Okay, you know, whether we see there is a need to just go along with negative peace. I'm sure you all are aware of it. Or we need to push more for a more positive peace, and how do we see conflict, whether we see conflict as something that is necessary for transformation, or we see conflict as a hindrance to the development of society, you know, because there are different views, you know. So I think we need to have more also discussion in regards to that. You know, a government view of peace might be different from the, you know, people on the ground. You know, in terms of peace. Okay, so it's not only men, women, old, youth, but different actors have different views of peace. But coming back again to our recommendations, maybe we just have maybe a couple of minutes as a concluding, you know, concluding statement by the speakers, just recommendations on what ASEAN-IPR can do to promote the empowerment of women and youth in building sustainable peace. Dr. Yunyasit, you want to join? Yes, please.
Yes, of course. What we discussed today can maybe throw some seed into our members in the Women Peace Registry, that for the future activity, that what can be done more, right? But I see one point is crucial, is that when we want to empower youth and women, we need to be engaged with other actors. We cannot have our dialogue among the women group or youth group and then think gonna change. We need to engage the male representative or other sectors in the society to that, because the acceptance from them or understanding from them will help the task of empowering women become more easier and become more successful, right? So the platform for exchange between women, youth, and also other stakeholders is important. Of course, training we can do, training, capacity building, that one we can tailor-made, because in each country we have different needs, women and youth have different needs. But this kind of platform, it can be created in country and also across the country, so that learning and sharing can be, you know, can be circulate among our members country. So I think a platform for interaction and exchange between women, youth with other stakeholders, that's something that we should do in the future.
Thank you, Dr. Yunyasit. Dr. Raharja?
Thank you very much. I'm touched by the statement of Pak Rezlan of the role of cross-pillar activity. And inside of ASEAN, there are two bodies, right? Pak, yang with the mandate of doing cross-pillar activity. One is ASEAN-IPR, the other one is ASEAN Intergovernmental Commission on Human Rights. So I think the very concrete activity that you can do is to collaborate with AICHR to make sure that human rights is fully understood as one of the inevitable element of peace in the region that's already committed in the charter and also in other declarations in ASEAN. And second of all, I think it's very important for us to recognize the participation of non-state actors in solving peace. And without having a concrete, what you call that, pilot projects, I think it's quite hard for people to see how all these ideas translate into activities. So if to some degree you can create workshops together with AICHR or with other sectoral bodies in ASEAN to brainstorm. But then IPR, because you are very much based in research, you can pick and select, you know, certain areas that's acceptable to all member states. Let's say on conflict of resource distribution or about religion-based violence. You know, just pick a topic that we can all go inside. And after all, it's only us in ASEAN. Unless we talk about ourselves, then we don't have the credibility as well to talk about peace in other parts of the world, unless we learn and help ourselves really well in that matter. So I think it's time now that we allow all these initiatives that's been very great so far to matter, to help governments across ASEAN to solve you know, day-to-day problems. The model that's developed by Nonviolent Peace Force, for instance, the engagement of non-state actors in how they deal with you know, when violence actually happen outside of their house. What are they going to do if the military suddenly show up? Then what are you going to do? So this kind of practices, unless you give dedicate time and resources for all people in ASEAN to experience, it's very hard to comprehend. But thank you again for all the opportunity. I'm sure we're moving ahead in a great direction after this.
Thank you, Dr. Raharja. Ms. Bosto, last few comments from you.
Thank you. Well, I can only agree with all that has been said so far, and definitely consulting in a tailored manner, or consulting towards then engaging in a tailored manner with different groups is, I think, what resonates with me and what I think is very important. I would maybe add one more thing, which is streamlining in a way, or making more visible existent initiatives that are maybe successful on grassroots level, that are maybe not receiving the visibility that can really, you know, multiply just the best practices and so on. So like sharing what has been done on the field and providing a platform for these very positive initiatives so that they can be replicated. Those will be the two things. And yeah, I just also want to thank from my end very much for the opportunity to being here. It was a great learning experience as well. And I hope we can have a chance to continue this dialogue in some other venue. Thank you.
Okay, thank you, Ms. Bosto. And I think we had a very fruitful afternoon today, discussing empowering women and youth in building sustainable peace. I think all the speakers agree, you know, that building peace, you know, is something, you know, that needs time, and also that needs the involvement, you know, of the various tracks and all the stakeholders. You know, so inclusivity is very important to build peace that is both positive and that is sustainable. So we are not looking not only of transforming the situation, we are looking at transforming the structure. We are talking about transforming the relationships, you know, between the different tracks. We also talk about the 3 C's, you know, which is one is that any work on building sustainable peace needs to be comprehensive. And then it needs to be contingency upon the particular situation, and there needs to be complementarity, you know, between the different actors. So it needs everybody. It needs all the stakeholders. We mentioned that already, and we've got lots of also the recommendations and comments, you know, from the 3 speakers. I would like to thank all of them, and I think this is something that the ASEAN-IPR can bring together and do more. And I really look forward, you know, to working all of you again, you know, on activities. Not only on activities done by the ASEAN-IPR, we can also do our own activities, no worries. But I also want to congratulate the ASEAN Institute for Peace and Reconciliation, you know, for organizing this very important webinar and to keep the conversation going. Before I end, I also want to mention, unfortunately, that today is the last day of work for my old friend, Ambassador Reslan Jini. And I want to take this opportunity to thank him, for all his effort, as the first executive director of the ASEAN Institute for Peace and Reconciliation. And, I know for a fact, because I sit on the advisory board of the ASEAN-IPR, and I've seen how Ambassador Reslan has been working very hard to promote peace and reconciliation within the region. Sometimes I think also including to promote peace and reconciliation among members of the advisory board and the general council, and he's been a very good diplomat, he's been a very good facilitator and mediator. And it has been an honor and privilege of mine to know him and to work with him for these last few years. I'm just so sad that he's leaving us, but I know that he will still be around to help us, to guide us in the activities that we want and need to do in the future. So, Pak Reslan, I want you to give some remarks at the end and to close this webinar. Please, Pak Reslan, the floor is yours. You can take how many minutes that you want.
Thank you very much. Thank you very much, Pak Zam, for your kind words. It's really been a pleasure for me heading this institute for the past 2 years. And of course, any achievement that we have been having is, of course, due to the support and guidance of the advisory board, which Pak Zam is one member of it, the governing council, and of course also the ASEAN Women for Peace Registry. I'm so lucky to have that support, and I really appreciate the support. I'm very happy with the discussion today. It's been very rich, and thank you for the thank you is due to the speakers that we have today. They have come up with very great ideas. I think the recommendation, we have noted the recommendation, and of course, I will be immediately hand it over to my successor for him to try to find out how this ASEAN-IPR can take all the recommendations. That is one thing. And today, this discussion was very ably moderated by my good friend Pa Zam. And it becomes very dynamic because on how he moderated this webinar. So thank you to all of you. And I'm sure we'll be meeting again virtually, perhaps for some time in a number of virtual meetings. And I wish you all good health and also happiness until we meet again. And thank you for the audience that have been really participating actively. Thank you to KAICIID. We really hope that one day we can have bigger, wider collaboration with KAICIID. So thank you all, and with this, until the next webinar. Thank you.
Thank
Bye-bye.
you.
Thank you. Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you.
For the opportunity. Thank you. Thank you.
Let's say, inshallah, next year we will meet each other in person, not on this online. Okay, and
we met before. I remember we met before.
Now you remember.
At the canteen. Yes, I remember at the Mahidol.
Okay, once again, thank you to all the speakers, and to all the listeners for joining today's webinar. It's been a very enjoyable webinar, and I think we have taken a lot from this webinar. And thank you again, Pak Reslan, for all your contribution to peace and reconciliation in the region.
Thank you.
I will give it back to our secretariat. Thank you, and see you all again. Stay safe.
Bye.
Yeah,
Thank
stay
you.
safe. Bye-bye.
Bye. Thank you.
Are we still live?